So here's kind of a weird story. Um, this is kind of an insight into like how much of a kind of drunk I used to be. So I used to go to this bar that was down the street from me, and I preferred to go to like really kind of quiet divey bars. This place wasn't a dive, but it was pretty quiet, and they had cheap pitchers. I think it was like $4 pitchers of like Coors Light or something like that. Bud Light, probably Bud Light. And I'd probably drink 2 or 3 pitchers of beer and just sort of write notes to myself and be alone and weird, and or just think or whatever. And so one night I was there and I was sitting at the bar. It was kind of a U-shaped bar. And sitting across from me were these 2 guys that I saw there all the time. They kind of reminded me of, Tyler Durden and Jack from Fight Club, because there was one kind of normal looking guy and one kind of like more attractive, sort of better dressed guy, and they kind of had like a out to have fun kind of vibe. And they were laughing at this guy who was like so trashed he was like falling asleep at the bar, and they were like throwing things at him, and he would just kind of like fall asleep, and they would throw something at him and he'd wake up and he'd be like, what's going on? And then he would drink some more and fall asleep again. And they were just laughing at this guy. And then they left. And then after they left, he came and he sat down right next to me. And this used to happen to me all the time. Like, I drank a lot, but I was never trashed. I usually just maintained like a buzz, like a really heavy buzz at all times. And but sometimes I get pretty trashed, I guess. But this dude was just like incoherent, and he like almost leans into me, and he was just like, "Hey, that's kind of fucked up, isn't it?" And I was kind of, I'd had it up to my nose with those kinds of drunk people that just like want to talk to me. I've had so many weird situations where just like, old drunk ladies trying to hit on me, or like old drunk men trying to tell me about the longest highway in the country and just weird shit, because I used to just drink alone and think, and so I guess that attracts those kind of people. But so this guy is like breathing alcohol in my face, and he's like, "That was fucked up, wasn't it?" And for some reason I was just like, "Oh yeah, that was so fucked up." And then I distracted him. I was like, "Hey, have you ever heard of this thing called the 1-inch punch?" And I guess it was like, it's kind of this stupid thing where like you'll go like, you'll press your hand against someone's chest, and then you'll like put your weight into them, and then knock them over. I don't know. It was this thing that me and my friends were doing to each other at the time. And he was like, "No, I've never heard of it." And I was like, "Oh, well, I described it. I go like this, and I punch you, and I see how hard." I don't know. So, I mean, it's dumb. Everything about the story is so dumb. So I'm like, "Do you want to try it?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." So he like braces himself, and I do the, the 1-inch punch thing, and then he falls backwards, and he rolls backwards twice, and he knocks over 2 bar stools in the process, and he's like rolling around. He's just on the ground like groaning, and I'm like, fuck, what did I do? And of course I was a sarcastic asshole at the time, so I look over to the bartender and I'm just like, "Check, please." And and then as soon as the guy collects his wits, he stands up. Now he's got some adrenaline going, so he's less drunk, He stands up and he's like, "Why did you do that?" And I was like, "You wanted me to." "You wanted me to." And he was like, "No, you tricked me." And so anyway, it was fucked up. So he's like trying to get me to fight him, basically. And I didn't want to fight the guy. And so he's like talking at me, and I'm just ignoring him as I sign the check. And then I leave, and then fucking I light a cigarette, and I like walk across the parking lot, and then he's like, "Hey you," or I hear someone yell, "Hey you," or some shit like that. And fucking he's like, "Get back here." And so I see him and like 4 other guys walk out of the bar. And I'm like, where the fuck did these guys come from? Like there's like 4 guys that are like on his side now. Like, where were they before? Like, why wasn't he talking to them? Why wasn't he breathing alcohol in their faces? And so this fucking, like, it was like NSYNC. So I'm standing there smoking a cigarette, and there's this like boy band of people doing the what dance. You know, they're trying to provoke me into fighting them, all 5 of them, by just going like what, and like throwing their hands around going what. I call it the what dance because they were just saying what and like gesturing around, and it was like the guy in the front and the 4 guys kind of behind him. And so I'm just like, okay, I'm trying to collect my wits. I'm like smoking my cigarette, and I'm like, fuck. So like this guy's probably gonna throw a punch, and I have to figure out what the fuck I'm gonna do after he does that, because if I go down, they're all just gonna like kick me to death or something, you know. Like I didn't like I didn't like what I'd gotten myself into. So fucking but I mean, because of my depression and because of because I was wasted all the time, and because I was so used to like suppressing my emotions, I was just kind of like dead, no reaction, staring at all of them. And I think that was the only thing that kept them from attacking me, was just how calm I was. The only reason I was calm is because I faced down suicidal depression every day and downplayed it to such a degree that I repressed all my emotions, right? So I had this uncanny ability to just like not emotionally react to anything. And so as I'm like thinking, what the fuck am I gonna do? This like chick who called herself a Jewish chick, she can't. So this lady comes out. She's got glasses and dark hair. She's a little overweight. She gets out and she's like, you know, oh, if you're gonna, all 5 of you guys are gonna gang up on this one guy. Well, if you're gonna fight him, you have to fight a girl too. And she stands in front of me, between me and this guy that I had knocked over in the bar. And so they're yelling at each other. And then this like really short guy with like scars all over his face. Like this guy, I don't know where the fuck he came from, but he was like 5'5" or something, and really muscly, and like looked like he'd been in the sun a lot, and he just looked like he had like pockmarks everywhere on his shoulders, on his face. He just looked like he'd been dragged through the road or something behind a truck and survived. And I don't know, he was just crazy looking. And I guess he was friends with the chick, and he was like, I've been fighting my whole life. If you're gonna fight this guy, you have to fight me too. And he's like talking shit to the 4 guys behind the main guy that the chick is talking to. And this is how much of an asshole I was back then too. So I'm smoking my cigarette, and all these people are distracted. And I was just like, I'm pretty sure I can walk away without anyone noticing, you know? So I start like just walking away, and I'm just about to turn the corner and like be hidden behind a fence so that no one sees me. And but then someone saw me and was like, hey, that's the guy that started this whole shit. And so I got caught. And so fucking God. So now, I mean, the short guy and the chick were still like on my side, and the 5 guys were still like against me. And just as like shit's getting to like a fever pitch, the bartender pokes his head out the door and he says, I called the cops. So none of us wants to be doing this shit in front of any cops, so we all leave. and the five guys are like on the other side of the street, and you know the chick and the dude that like were on my side are with me, and we're walking back towards my house because I live like 2 blocks away. Because I walked to bars because I got so smashed every night that I didn't want to be driving around, you know? Although that's a whole nother story. But fucking so, you know, and they're like, oh well, if these guys know where you live, they're gonna fucking kill you or something. I don't know. But basically we ended up standing at opposite sides of a street corner for like an hour or two, like well into the fucking early morning. I don't know how late it was. I don't remember the details of how late it was or anything, but fucking eventually they get bored and they leave, and then I'm like, cool, I guess I'll go home and sleep. So that's the what dance story. Basically how I fucking enlisted 7 people in an almost fight and then just bullshit. I don't know. It was just that kind of shit used to happen to me when I used to be a drunk. So don't be a drunk.